on. We can do it.
Hello everybody, my name is Jules, and thank you for tuning in to the second installment of my anticipated releases of 2021. The first video that's on my channel, it covers 6 books that are literary fiction and contemporary fiction. And in this video, I'm going to focus on my anticipated releases for science fiction, historical fiction, nonfiction, and romance. So if you're interested in any of those genres, please stay tuned, and I hope everyone's been having a good new year so far. So let's get into the books. So to start off this video, I'm going to go through the historical fiction section. I have 3 entries within this category, and I'm going to run through them in order of release dates. And hopefully the release dates don't change too much. I know the pandemic can probably mix things up a bit, but hopefully they stay somewhat similar to the ones that I have found online so far. So the first book I'm going to start off with is The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr. It's coming out January 5th, which is literally the day after tomorrow based on the day I'm filming this, so hopefully I can get this out soon. And it's an adult historical fiction, and it's actually his debut novel, and it's following the relationship between 2 black men in the South. They're enslaved on a plantation, and their names are Isaiah and Samuel. And their relationship is not seen as anything irregular, it seems like, based on the blurb, amongst the other slaves, until another slave on the plantation actually starts to preach. He becomes a preacher of the master's gospel. But basically that kind of turns, there's a culture shift which begins in the plantation, and I'm assuming that their relationship becomes more strained and difficult and falls under criticism as well. And the story is going to be told through what seems like multiple perspectives. And this book seems like it's going to talk a lot about betrayal, kind of being betrayed by one's own, and kind of also on the flip side, I think it's going to talk about the preacher and what drove him to kind of make this decision and the shift as well. So I think it sounds great. I love multiple perspectives, so I hope it's done really well, and I'm really excited. The next book on my list is The Ribbed King by Ladee Hubbard, and I'm really excited. I've seen this on a lot of other people's lists as well, so I'm excited that everybody's excited for this book. So hopefully it lives up. And it's coming out January 19th, and it's an adult historical fiction that focuses on August, who is a black man who's a groundskeeper for a white family who's like around middle class, and they have all of their servants and help are black as well, and notably they have a fantastic cook named Miss Mammy. And the white family falls into some financial difficulty, and one of their solutions for this is to start bottling and selling Miss Mammy's rib sauce. That's the name of the book. And they actually use August's picture or face for the labeling of the sauce, and obviously the help are not getting paid. This is like exploitation, and we seem to be, it seems like we're going to follow August and this internal struggle he has, the rage, the contempt that starts building. This is obviously very relevant. It was literally like halfway through last year where the Quaker announced that they were going to relabel and remarket Aunt Jemima, which is, I don't know if it's a North American thing, but it is pancake mix. They recognized that it's a racial stereotype, and I don't know if they released a new name yet, but I'm really excited to hear some commentary on this topic. And the last book for this section is The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. I actually haven't read any of Kristen Hanna's books. I really want to pick up The Nightingale still, but this one sounds great and interesting as well. It's coming out February 2nd, and it's another adult historical fiction, and this one is set in the midst of the Great Depression, and honestly I haven't read a lot of books from the Great Depression, and I'm excited. So it's specifically focusing on the Dust Bowl era, which mainly affected the prairie states and provinces, and it's where there were huge dust storms, and it was very difficult to live and make a living on the land at the time. And we're following our protagonist Elsa, who is faced with the choice of whether to stay with her land or go. And it sounds like a lot of people were migrating to California at the time, so yeah, stay or go to California. And it seems like it's going to be a very quiet read. The blurb is actually quite vague, but I like that. if any of you guys pick it up, I'd be interested in hearing more. So the next section I'm going to be talking about is science fiction. And I'll admit, I don't read a lot of science fiction, so I picked what sounded interesting and fun at the time. The first book is The Echo Wife, which is coming out by Sarah Gailey, and it's coming out on February the 2nd. It's an adult science fiction, and the publishers got me with the comparisons to Westworld. I only watched season 1 of Westworld, but I really liked it, and I kind of stopped there, but this got me. I was in a Westworld mood. And we're following Evelyn, who's a scientist, and she basically creates a clone of herself, and her clone's name is Martine. And this is another very vague premise, but again, I like it. Her clone is basically having an affair with her husband, and she finds out, and we're going to figure out what happens from there. So it definitely sounds very plot-driven, and it's described as a thrill ride, so, you know, I needed that. Sometimes you get tired of reading about the depression, and we are, like, kind of in a depression right now. So, like, it's one of my fun books. No shame in that. So the last book in this little section is Clara and the Sun, and again, I've heard a lot of hype about this one, mostly because of the author. It's Kazuo Ishiguro. I actually haven't read a lot of his books. I think the only one I read was, like, Never Let Me Go, and it was many years ago. So I'm excited to pick his books up again. And it's coming out March the 2nd. It's an adult science fiction. And again, a very short blurb, a little taste of what's to come. It's an adult science fiction, which we are following Clara, who is an AI friend. So it seems a little futuristic. And we're basically seeing the book is going to follow her perspective while she's in the shop and just observing what goes on around her, and I'm not sure if she actually gets someone to buy her and whether we're going to follow that as well. It's left very vague, very open-ended. I like it, and it's giving me major Her vibes. I remember enjoying the movie Her. I'm excited to get that premise again. And the question that this book is probably going to revolve around, based on the blurb, is what does it mean to love, which again is kind of like Her. So I'm excited. So the next section, and I don't know if you can call this a section because it's one book and it's romance. I don't read a lot of romance, but you know, like I said, there's a lot of serious, more emotional books in this anticipated list so far, and sometimes you just need something a little bit lighter, and this sounded like it could be fun, yet also emotional. It's called The Love Proof by Madeline Henry, and it's coming out February the 9th. It's another adult romance, and what got me with this is that it said it was going to span decades. That's something that I love. That's like a storytelling technique that I love. And we're going to follow our protagonist, Sophie, who's a physics prodigy. Yeah, because who wants to follow like someone who's normal, has a normal level of physics?
That's someone like me. That's boring.
But she basically falls in love during her time in university, and there seems to be some heartbreak involved as well, which leads her to throw herself back almost obsessively into physics, and she wants to, this part lost me a little, like I said, I'm not a prodigy, prove that true love takes place in all realities and that the perfect love can take place. Basically, she's trying to prove something, the love proof. We get it, it's great, and I really like this tagline, which also got me, which is that perfect love can take place between imperfect people. And I love flawed characters. I hope they're done well, and I'm really excited to give it a read. So the last mini section, because it's another one book section, is nonfiction. Again, I feel like I've been giving this disclaimer a lot. I don't read a lot of nonfiction, and honestly, I've been trying to ease into it a little bit more with memoirs, and this one sounded great. It's called To Be Honest by Michael Levitin, and it's coming out January 5th again, the day after tomorrow. But like I said, it's a memoir, and it focuses on his life with his family growing up in what he calls an honesty cult, but basically they're obsessed with not lying and not telling the truth all the time. I can see how that could go downhill. And it sounds like he led a very sheltered life as a child and possibly a teenager, but it's how he changes in his transition as he enters the real world and starts getting a job and getting into relationships and going to university, I think, as well. So I'm excited. This question kind of runs through my mind a couple of times a year, and I actually have a book called Lying, and I think it's more of a philosophical nonfiction book sitting on my shelf, so maybe I'll read them together, I'm not sure. But it just sounded nice. It sounded very family driven. So the next mini section, I say mini section because it's another one book section, is nonfiction. And I feel like I've been giving this disclaimer for all of my sections, but I don't read a lot of nonfiction. I read like 15 books last year, so it's not like a crazy statement that I haven't read a lot of genres. I haven't been very diverse with my reading, but I'm trying to get back into it and intentionally do that. And I'm going to ease myself in with probably some memoirs. So one of the memoirs is To Be Honest by Michael Levitin. It's coming out January 5th, again, the day after tomorrow. And it's a memoir, like I said, that's focusing on his childhood with his family who were obsessed with not lying. So he basically calls them like an honesty cult. And his life growing up. So it seems like he led a very sheltered life with his family. And it kind of walks us through his transition as he started going into the real world, getting a job, forming relationships with people who don't think like that. So I think this is a very interesting story. So that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed the books that I've picked that I'm excited for, and I think I covered a lot of genres here. I think the only things I missed were fantasy and thrillers, and I do have some on my list, but I am going to be doing these videos quarterly, so quarterly anticipated releases, and that's mostly because I think things get lost if you just do one anticipated release a year. And also lots of new things come out or are announced, so I just want to keep on top of that. So I hope you guys are enjoying this content. If you liked it, please feel free to give me a like. Oh my gosh, I'm still stumbling over my words with this. And if you want to stay up to date with any future videos, I'm going to be trying to upload at least once a week. Please click subscribe. And yeah, I hope wherever you guys are right now in the world, that you guys have a great day and stay safe.